It's a Wednesday. I'm Bill Hemmer, live inside of America's Newsroom. Morning at home. Morning to you.
Morning to you, Bill Hemmer. A big night last night and a busy day this morning. I'm Sandra Smith. President Trump not holding back as he worked to boost support for GOP candidates ahead of the midterm elections.
We truly are making America great again. We're not making apologies. We're not making excuses. We're respected again as a country. To keep on winning, you have to vote Republican in November. Marsh's very liberal Democrat opponent, Phil Bredesen, he's an absolute, total tool of Chuck Schumer. Together, we are taking back our country. We're returning the power back to our great American patriots.
Well, that rally coming just days after President Trump abruptly canceled that planned June 12th summit between Kim Jong-un and himself. But today, the most senior North Korean official to visit the U.S. in nearly 2 decades, heading to New York City in hopes of laying the groundwork for that potential meeting.
Team Fox coverage this morning. John Roberts live at the White House. Analysis from Stephen Hayes in Washington. Let's start with David Lee Miller live here in New York City, where there will be a big meeting today or tomorrow. David Lee, let's start there. Good morning.
Good morning, Bill. It is expected that the North Korean diplomat Kim Young-chol is going to arrive at New York's JFK airport in just the next few hours, but much about his itinerary has been shrouded in secrecy. Very few details have been released to the public. The administration is now essentially taking a 3-pronged approach to preparing for a summit with North Korea. Meetings have been taking place, or will, in Singapore as well as the demilitarized zone, but by far the highest level talks are slated to take place here in New York City in the next day or two between the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, and North Korean diplomat Kim Young-chol. As you mentioned, he is now the highest ranking, or will be highest ranking, North Korean diplomat to visit the United States in 18 years. And the fact that Kim is even meeting with Pompeo is seen by experts as very significant. He is a former spy boss and the current vice chair of North Korea's Workers' Party. At 72, he has served not just Kim Jong-un, but North Korea's 2 previous leaders. He's a trusted confidant of the regime's ruler, and he has twice met with Mike Pompeo. Specific items on the agenda have not been publicly released, but analysts say a complete and unilateral termination of North Korea's nuclear program will likely be a key topic. The director of defense studies at the Center for the National Interest says North Korea has a long history of trying to run out the clock at negotiations. Listen.
North Korean playbook, to be quite frank, is to keep talking and to keep talking forever, to string out negotiations for years, maybe even decades if we can. And that's how we've gotten to North Korea having such a viable nuclear weapons deterrent.
And as I said at the outset, Bill, not clear when these 2 men are going to meet face to face. We do know that the Secretary of State has a meeting with the president at 2 o'clock, so we do not expect anything to happen here until after that time.
Got it. Okay, David Lee, keep an eye on it. David Lee Miller live in the streets of New York City. Thank you, sir. Sandra has more.
The trip of the North Korean official to the United States giving the Trump administration a renewed sense of optimism that this meeting with North Korea can actually get done. Chief White House correspondent John Roberts is live on the North Lawn at the White House for us this morning. John, the president hit on North Korea negotiations hard last night in Nashville. We heard a lot from him on this.
The president has been making a point about North Korea and bringing them to the table and making sure that his relationship with Kim Jong-un seems to be on a good footing, which it appears to be right now. The White House not saying that the summit is back on just yet. I imagine that a lot of that will ride on the outcome of meetings between the Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Kim Young-chol of North Korea, either later today or early tomorrow morning in New York. But the White House yesterday sounding a note of optimism about the idea that it could still be on June the 12th. Sarah Huckabee Sanders on the way to a big rally in Nashville saying, quote, the president's letter specifically said that we were open to the meeting at that time. And again, we expect it to take place, but we'll see what happens. We're going to be prepared if it takes place on June the 12th. We'll certainly be prepared. If for some reason it takes place at a later date, we'll be prepared for that as well. The White House has got two teams in the East Asia region, one led by the Deputy Chief of Staff, Joe Hagan, is in Singapore to set up logistics for a meeting between the president and Kim Jong-un. Another team is at the DMZ to work with North Korea on what the summit can achieve. You also want to make sure, you always want to make sure a lot of this is prearranged so there's no surprises during the meeting. At a Nashville political rally for Marsha Blackburn, who's running for the Senate in Tennessee, the president had praise for his national security advisor, John Bolton, who got North Korea all worked up when he said denuclearization for North Korea would likely follow the Libyan model. Listen to what the president said last night.
Who is John Bolton? Great John Bolton. They think he's so nasty and so tough that I have to hold him back, okay? It's pretty great. And he's doing a great job. You better get some rest because we have some pretty good negotiations coming up.
You better get some rest because there's some pretty big negotiations coming up. I know for a fact that Bolton gets up every day at least 4:30 and is into work very early. You know, the president has walked back the idea of the Libyan model for North Korean denuclearization, saying that Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi never got any security or political guarantees from the United States. The president has repeatedly said that he is prepared to give Kim Jong-un personal, political, and security guarantees if he goes ahead with denuclearization. We'll find out soon where all of this goes, Sandra.
A lot of questions still, John. Meanwhile, in that wide-ranging rally speech last night by the president, he also laid out a strategy for the midterms. What did we hear on that?
Well, the president suggesting last night that everything that he has been trying to accomplish over the last 16 months will be at risk if the Democrats take over one or both houses of Congress after November. Tax cuts, job creation, regulatory reform, national security. The president also indicating last night that he plans to pound Nancy Pelosi from now until November with her criticism of the president calling MS-13 gang members animals. Listen to how he wound up the crowd last night.
13 lover Nancy Pelosi. She loves MS-13. Can you imagine? Remember? I said they're animals, and she said, how dare you say that? They're not human beings. And this is why we call the bloodthirsty MS-13 gang members exactly the name that I used last week. What was the name? Animals.
The president getting some audience participation there last night in the same way he has when he used to say, who's going to pay for the wall? And the crowd would shout back, Mexico. By the way, Sandra, just want to point out that there's a lot of meetings with Kims coming up. There's the potential summit with Kim Jong-un. There's Mike Pompeo's meeting with Kim Jong-chul. And Kim Kardashian is going to be at the White House later on today. She's got a meeting with Jared Kushner about prison reform. We're also hearing that she'll probably stop by and say hello to the president. She is also, along with Kanye West, her husband, advocating for a pardon for a great-grandmother of hers who's been in jail since 1996 on a drug charge. So a lot of Kims on the president's mind lately.
Another busy and interesting day at the White House. John Roberts, thank you.
You can follow her on Instagram. Did you know that?
You don't say.
President Trump coming out swinging last night against Democrats, urging voters to elect Republicans in the midterms come November.
If you want your country to be safe, then you must go out and get the Democrats the hell out of office because there's no common sense. And we're going to defend our borders, and we're going to fight hard on crime.
Stephen Hayes, editor-in-chief, Weekly Standard, Fox's contributor. Steve, nice to see you, and good morning to you. So, when you think about elections at 6 months, how important is this for him to be out there, do you think? What will his role be? Is it pushing Senate candidates, pushing some House candidates, or what will the White House do with this?
Well, we're starting to see what his role is likely to be. I think it's beginning to take shape. I think we're likely to see him in places where Donald Trump is popular and less likely to see him in places where Donald Trump is not popular, which has a certain common sense to it. Look, I think he can be effective when he makes a case, as he did yesterday, in favor of the candidate running for office, like Marsha Blackburn, talking about what she's done, talking about how he needs Republicans to keep, in this case, the Senate. He can be pretty effective that way. I think he runs a risk, however, of alienating independents and suburban voters when he says things like Nancy Pelosi loves MS-13. I mean, I disagree with Nancy Pelosi about a lot of things, including immigration, but I don't think Nancy Pelosi loves MS-13, and I think that will not fall well on the ears of some suburban women voters as well as independents that Republicans will need in order to keep the House and the Senate.
He can still fill a House. We can see that clearly. On North Korea now, Steve, there's a big meeting sometime in the next 36 hours. What is your sense today of how you think this is going?
Yeah, it's a big question. I mean, we've seen this has been sort of a herky-jerky process. 2 steps back, 1 step forward, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I think we can have a lot of confidence that Mike Pompeo knows what he's doing, that he's coming to these negotiations with a sense of realism about what the North Koreans are, what their history has been, and a sense of skepticism of where this is going. Now, I think in his public comments, he's made a great effort to be optimistic about where this can go, but I think behind the scenes, Mike Pompeo, I think, maintains a sense of realism about exactly just how far this can go.
I think the readout on the meeting here in New York should be intriguing at an absolute minimum. Okay, Steve, thank you so much. Good to have you back.
Thanks,
Stephen
Bill.
Hayes there, live in Washington, D.C. So that meeting is going to happen here in New York City, and we'll see what comes of it.
Whether that's today, tomorrow, we still don't know all the details.
Yeah, we know. We know
shortly.
Pompeo's a tough hombre, and so we shall see. Right?
All right. We'll keep watching that. Meanwhile, President Trump doubling down on his attacks on what he calls Spygate.
They had people infiltrating our campaign. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Never in the history of our country has something taken place like took place during this election.
And the president now launching new accusations against Democrats. We're talking to Alan Dershowitz about the president's claims and how some of his fellow Republicans are responding.
Also, hours after firing off a highly controversial tweet, Roseanne Barr's highly rated show gets the axe from ABC. We'll tell you what she is saying about all that today. Coming up.
And police releasing brand new information on a terrorist act overseas after a man kills 3 people yesterday.
Attention, balle perdue, hein. Abattez-le. Ouais. Allez, abattez-le, connard. Ouais.
It was President Trump himself who said, number one, I didn't collude with Russia, but if anyone connected with my campaign did, I want the FBI to find that out. It looks to me like the FBI was doing what President Trump said, I want you to do, find it out. I am even more convinced that the FBI did exactly what my fellow citizens would want them to do when they got the information they got, and that it has nothing to do with Donald Trump.
Trey Gowdy, very interesting reaction. The House Oversight Committee chair last night, very interesting readout with Martha. Meanwhile, President Trump continues to go after the Department of Justice and the Bureau for the move. Alan Dershowitz, author of Trumped Up, How Criminalization of Political Differences Endangers Democracy. How you doing, sir? And good morning to you.
Good morning.
Now, Gowdy is one of the few people who has now talked about a classified briefing from last Thursday. What do you make of the comments he has given now?
I think they're fairly persuasive. As a civil libertarian who doesn't believe this is a partisan activity, I think this is a wrong attempt to have a special counsel, but not partisan. I'm relatively satisfied with Gowdy's assurances. I would rather see the Inspector General look into this. Ultimately, the American people. Whenever you get any kind of an informer anywhere near a campaign, there has to be an assurance that it was not political or partisan in nature. I'm about halfway persuaded now by Congressman Gowdy's statement, and I suspect
so you use that word, persuasive, persuaded that the FBI acted properly. Is that what you're saying?
Right. I'm halfway persuaded. I want to hear the Inspector General, and I'd like to see the facts for myself. But I'm on the way to being persuaded.
Okay. Should the FBI have informed the Trump campaign what it was doing? If they were suspicious of somebody on the team, should they have known about that?
Well, it's interesting. They probably should have informed the candidate. They probably should have said to him, look, we're going to be checking out the way you said we should to see if there's anybody in your campaign. We'd like you to sign off on that. Now, there may be concern that he would then tell them. So judgment call. And I'm not going to criticize the FBI for not telling President-elect Trump or candidate Trump. But I think when you get involved in a presidential campaign, you have to be Caesar's wife. You have to lean over backwards to make sure no one can ever charge you with trying to influence the outcome of an election. Elections are just too important to American democracy.
Is it possible the FBI did not find what it was looking for? In other words, if they had something that was super urgent, then, maybe they throw the red flag up. But maybe the initial investigation really was not taking them to a place that they had suspected, and therefore they kept their mouth shut.
That's very likely, and that also may explain why Comey publicly announced the status of his investigation of Hillary Clinton, which may have cost her the election, and didn't say anything about the Trump campaign, which might have leveled the playing field because they didn't have anything on Trump. If they had something on Trump, I think they were obliged by equality to say something about that in much the way they said something about Hillary Clinton.
Okay, so he also said, so Trump wasn't the target, right? That's what Gowdy said. He said, if you haven't done anything wrong, go ahead and sit down with Bob Mueller, get the matter over with. You don't like that?
He's not a good lawyer if he says that. In 53 years of practice, I've had clients who've had nothing to hide. I've never had any of them sit down with prosecutors. Prosecutors aren't trying to help you. They're trying to set a perjury trap for you. Even Comey in his book said the reason they didn't question Hillary Clinton is they already knew all the facts. And the only reason for questioning the subject is to see if they'll lie about it. And I don't see the answer being if you've done nothing wrong, sit down with the prosecutor. That's not good advice to the client.
45 minutes ago, the president slammed Jeff Sessions yet again. He quoted Trey Gowdy. I'll just show you one of three tweets. This is the last one, the third one. Quoting Gowdy, he said, there are lots of really good lawyers in the country. He could have picked somebody else, end quote, and I wish I did. Does that put the focus back on Jeff Sessions? Do you think he is on thin water yet again, or is that a status quo relationship?
Well, first of all, I think the president was entirely correct. I think that Sessions should have advised him that if the investigation moves toward Russia, he would have to recuse. The president would then have said, thank you, Mr. Sessions. You're a great man, but I want somebody in the Office of Attorney General who can do a full-time job and be in charge of any investigation. Also, the minute he recused himself, he should have offered his resignation. And I don't know whether the president would have accepted it or not. But I think that the idea that the president was stuck with an attorney general who was recused from the most important investigation being conducted is an untenable situation for the president. The president is entitled to loyalty from his attorney general, the way Robert Kennedy gave loyalty to John Kennedy, the way William French Smith, the personal lawyer to Reagan, gave loyalty to his president, and the way Obama's attorney general gave loyalty to his president.
Well, I'm out of time, but thank you for yours. Come on back. Alan Dershowitz, thank you, sir, with us today. You bet.
Sure.
President Trump says while he may not agree with Democrats, they always come together when it counts.
The fact is, the Democrats are lousy politicians. They're lousy on policy. The one thing they do is they stick together.
The one way the president says they can be stopped.
Akbar several times during a knife and gun rampage. The attacker was an inmate on a 2-day release when he crept up behind 2 female police officers, stabbed them repeatedly, stole their handguns, and shot them in the back. He also shot and killed a man sitting in a nearby car and took a woman hostage before he was gunned down by police. Investigators now want to know whether or not the 22-year-old acted alone.
Well, new reaction continues to pour in overnight over Roseanne. ABC canceling her show hours after her tweet about Valerie Jarrett created massive controversy. Barr has since apologized, saying, quote, I want to apologize to Valerie Jarrett as well as to ABC and the cast and crew of the Roseanne show. I am sorry for making a thoughtless joke that does not reflect my values. I love all people and am very sorry. Let's bring in the host of Media Buzz and Fox News media analyst Howie Kurtz as people continue to digest this morning. Howie?
Good morning, Sandra. Just hours after tweeting her way into losing television's most popular show, Roseanne Barr spent the night venting her frustrations online. She accused co-star Michael Fishman of throwing her under the bus and said she was tired of being attacked and belittled more than other comedians who have said worse. But Barr also expressed remorse for the racist tweet that led ABC to abruptly cancel the rebooted sitcom. Here it is. Guys, I did something unforgivable, so do not defend me. It was 2 a.m. and I was ambient tweeting. It was Memorial Day, too. I went too far and do not want it defended. It was egregious, indefensible. Barr has since deleted that tweet with the ambient defense. It was her Twitter attack on former Obama White House advisor Valerie Jarrett that prompted ABC to quickly pull the plug over what the network called her abhorrent and repugnant remarks. ABC forfeiting an estimated $60 million in revenue by axing the second season, and several networks canning reruns of her old show as well. Barr had said, if Muslim Brotherhood and Planet of the Apes had a baby, equals VJ Valerie Jarrett. It was not the first time Barr had used such a slur about an African American, having made an ape reference 5 years ago about Obama advisor Susan Rice. Jarrett called the uproar a teaching moment on MSNBC.
I'm worried about all the people out there who don't have a circle of friends and followers who come right to their defense. Tone does start at the top, and we like to look up to our president and feel as though he reflects the values of our country.
Jarrett, by the way, had plenty of company in trying to tie the furor to President Trump, who had congratulated Roseanne after her debut.
Howie, what are critics saying this morning in the wake of all this? I mean, we're hearing from some, they're blaming the president for it.
You know, President Trump has absolutely nothing to do with this other than the fact that Roseanne played a pro-Trump housewife, and obviously he liked the show. And yet commentators like CNN's Don Lemon saying, well, Roseanne traffics in racism just like Donald Trump traffics in racism. We heard this a lot on MSNBC last night. I think it reflects an irresistible urge when there's a big negative cultural controversy for many in the mainstream media to turn it into a Trump negative controversy.
Yeah, and Howie, do you think that ABC executives were surprised by all this, specifically the ugliness of Roseanne's tweets?
Absolutely not. ABC knew what it was getting in Roseanne Barr. She has a decades-long history of going online and tweeting conspiracy theories on everything from 9/11 to Nazis. Just yesterday, she also propagated a false rumor about Chelsea Clinton being a relative of George Soros. And ABC President Ben Sherwood had said a couple months ago, well, nobody controls what Roseanne says. So ABC took a huge gamble that Roseanne could revive this comedy show, and she did. It was very successful without sort of talking herself into trouble, and that gamble failed spectacularly yesterday. Sandra.
All right, Howie, thank you. Howie Kurtz.
Made a bad move, poor judgment, cost her a lot. And everybody working around her, too, are paying a price for this, too.
Well, and everyone who worked on her show. And,
right.
Bob Iger called Valerie Jarrett before the network announced the cancellation of the show, just to let her know first that he does not tolerate comments such as Roseanne Barr's.
That's that. 29 past now. President Trump saying Mexico will pay for that wall. And now Mexico's president is firing back his message for the White House about who will cough up the money. Coming up, Sandra.
Plus, the market's opening after a heck of a day yesterday for the Dow. Fell nearly 400 points, but the president still sounding optimistic about the economy.
What's going up, folks? What can I say? They're just going up. Wages going up, and they're going up fast. The forgotten men and women of our country are no longer forgotten.
You have two things working on the markets. You've got this trade uncertainty because of the issue with tariffs between the U.S. and China. You've got a lot of political turmoil in Italy where a lot of people think there's a possibility that questions about the Eurozone and staying intact, whether or not that can, whether that's back on the table. Clearly it is from the election, so we'll see where they go. But up for the moment.
Add to that 1 week data point, and that was first quarter U.S. GDP was revised to 2.2%. And that was lower than expectations. You always get those missed expectations that can upset markets a bit. But the Dow often running to the upside right now, 170-point gain. It was quite a day yesterday. Decent sell-off, and it really kept selling off as the day went on. So we'll see where it goes today.
In the end, Mexico's going to pay for the wall. They do absolutely nothing to stop people from going through Mexico, from Honduras and all these other countries, the caravan, all of this stuff. They do nothing to help us. Nothing. They're going to pay for the wall, and they're going to enjoy it, okay?
President Trump once again insisting that Mexico will pay for that long-promised border wall, but Mexico's president is refusing, saying not now, not ever. I'm joined now by Mark Thiessen, columnist for the Washington Post, fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, and Fox News contributor. Here's the exact quote from Enrique Peña Nieto. He said, "No, President Trump, Mexico will never pay for a wall. Not now, not ever. Sincerely, Mexico. All of us." Mark.
I don't know if Mexico is going to pay for the wall, but the real obstacle to the wall are the Democrats in Congress. I mean, President Trump made an offer to the Democrats to pass DACA, to allow these dreamers to stay in the country, and some common sense immigration reforms in exchange for the wall and border security, and the Democrats can't bring themselves to make that deal. It's inexplicable to me why I mean, there's nothing wrong with a wall. You may not think a wall is the best way to secure the border, and there are other fixes you'd prefer, but there's nothing inherently wrong with a wall. So I don't understand why Democrats won't simply give him his wall and get what they've always wanted, which is legal status for the dreamers. But they seem to care more about the issue than they do about solving the situation these people are in.
He hit immigration hard last night, including the border wall as well as the MS-13 gang. The president slammed Democrats, specifically targeting Nancy Pelosi. Listen.
MS-13 lover, Nancy Pelosi. She loves MS-13. Can you imagine? Remember? I said they're animals, and she said, "How dare you say that? How dare you say that? Have you seen what they've done? We're taking them out of our country by the thousands. Out, out."
Wow, firing in all cylinders. And of course, he was referencing back to Nancy Pelosi's comment about MS-13 gang members, saying we are all God's children.
Well, I mean, she is right in the sense that we are all created in the image of likeness of God, even the worst among us. We all have human dignity, so nobody's an animal. But there are people who have free will and who choose to behave like animals. And Donald Trump is exactly right that MS-13 are a group of human beings who behave like animals on a daily basis. I mean, they literally are in league with Satan. And I don't mean that metaphorically. Last year, 2 MS-13 gang members who are in this country illegally kidnapped a teenage girl, tortured her, and killed her as what they called a soul sacrifice in a satanic ritual. They mutilated a 16-year-old boy so badly in Long Island last year that he could only be identified by the tattoo on his arm. So, you know, this is animalistic behavior, no doubt. And the Democrats have badly misplayed this, because first what they did is they lied about what Donald Trump said. They said that he said that all illegal immigrants are animals, and that's not what he said. He's always said there are good ones and there are bad ones, so he was not saying that. And then instead of admitting their mistake, they doubled down and found themselves defending MS-13, and so Trump is sticking it to them and wrapping their words around themselves, and they've got nobody to blame but themselves.
You know, we're showing these images of Chuck and Nancy, as they have become very well known as, the president referencing them specifically last night, saying they don't want the wall. Yeah. They want open borders. You know, Mark, are we getting a real taste of what's to come over the next few months?
Yeah, very much so. And I mean, look, the message that Trump had in that rally last night was extremely effective. And the Democrats are really creating these problems for themselves. When you've got Nancy Pelosi, instead of coming out and saying, look, we stand with the president against MS-13, defending MS-13, he's rope-a-doped them into defending MS-13. How do you do that? How can you be so politically stupid to let your political opponent wrap MS-13 around your neck that way?
Mark, I want to finish up by talking about something you will be involved with today, the signing at the White House. Yes. You will be present for that. The right to try bill. It passed Congress. The president will sign it. You'll be there for it. What do we need to know about this legislation?
So think about this. Imagine that you went to your doctor's office today and were given a terminal diagnosis. You have a terminal disease that you're going to die from, for which there is no cure. Now imagine getting the same diagnosis, but then finding out that there is a promising cure for that disease that is in clinical trials right now, but you can't get access to it because the federal government is blocking your way. That happens to literally thousands of Americans every year. And so President Trump is signing what's called a right to try law today, which gives terminal patients the right to try to save their own lives. In many states, your viewers have heard of right to die laws, which give terminal patients the right to end their lives. This is right to try is the opposite. It basically says that if you have tried every FDA-approved treatment and have exhausted all those options, and there's an experimental treatment that your doctor recommends for you, you don't have to go to the federal government and beg them for the right to try that. And for most people, that's an absolute no-brainer. And good for President Trump for signing it.
It's clearly legislation you're very passionate about, the Right to Try Act. It'll be signed by the president at the White House. You'll be there 12:15 p.m. Eastern time today.
Absolutely.
We'll keep our eye on that. Mark, thanks for being here this morning.
Thanks.
Check out this shot of the day, video of the day, man off the coast of Long Branch, New Jersey. This is beautiful. Capturing a whale almost entirely out of the water. Does he get it, Smitty?
Beautiful.
Just about, right? Full 360. Stuck the landing. That's a good summer day. Or as it is, spring for the moment here off the coast of New York. We haven't had many days like that here in the Northeast, by the way.
They're coming. They're coming.
I don't know, kid. We've been waiting a long time.
It looks pretty gray out there in New York City this morning. All right. Well, Fox News confirming an explosion and a UPS freight facility at a freight facility in Lexington, Kentucky. The breaking details on that in just a moment.
Also, President Trump not pulling punches with Democrats last night in Nashville, Tennessee. What fuel this could give the GOP heading into the summer months of midterms, we will look at that closely coming up right next here.
Phil, whatever the hell his name is, this guy will 100% vote against us every single time. I have Democrats come up to me. I love you, President. I love the job. But here's the problem. They're not going to vote for us.
Attention. This is off the Blue Sky Parkway, right off Interstate 75. Lexington police and fire crews responding and are on the scene. These freight facilities typically transport large pallet shipments, not the individual packages sent to residents. We are monitoring the story closely here, and we'll update you with details as we get them right here in America's Newsroom.
You see what's happening with the Democrats. So Marsh's very liberal Democrat opponent, Phil Bredesen, he's an absolute, total tool of Chuck Schumer. And of course, the MS-13 lover, Nancy Pelosi.
Well, they enjoyed that. President Trump calling out Marsha Blackburn's Democratic opponent, slamming Democratic leadership. This was a campaign event 6 months out. Radio talk show host and Fox News contributor Richard Fowler's here. Richard, what's happening? Good morning. Brad Blakeman, former deputy assistant to George W. Bush. Brad, how you doing? You guys need nicknames. Maybe Bad Brad and Slick Richard, something like that. I'll work on that. Brad, how do you think he does 6 months away from an election, keeping the base fired up and making sure Republicans vote?
Well, all you had to do is see that rally last night. The people were fired up beyond. You had people waiting outside, thousands who couldn't get in. I think the Republican base is fired up because they see that the Democrats are just against everything. If you stand for nothing, you're for nothing. And I think the Democrats, in their resistance to Trump, have a long road to hoe against his accomplishments. And Trump was smart because he laid out for the American people the math of politics. In a lower house, we need a simple majority, 218 to get anything done. And in the Senate, we need a supermajority, really, because some votes require 60 votes to get something to the floor. So it's all about numbers. If we don't have the numbers, we don't govern.
Yeah, I got you. Richard, what about that point that Brad's making? The joint was jumping last night. Now, you as a Democrat, do you look at that and think, man, that's trouble? Because I know Republicans would see President Obama out there and he would bring down the House. I mean, how much of a concern is this for the left?
Well, that is very true. Remember, in 2010, President Obama brought down the House many, many, many times. And yet still, we as a Democratic Party, as the president, President Obama put it, we got shellacked in the 2010 election. I think this is going to be very same here. All the criticism that President Trump Trump is making about this particular candidate, Phil Bredesen, in this particular race, that doesn't seem to stick to him. And here is why. This guy is somebody who has been the former governor of Tennessee. He has a history of winning statewide. He was a former mayor of Nashville. And beyond that, he's sort of seen as this sort of center of the road type of guy. He's sort of seen as a chamber of commerce type of Democrat. He's a titan of industry. And so it doesn't stick here. And the larger problem that we have in this particular race is Marsha Blackburn has a very low name ID. And because Senator Bob Corker and her aren't really getting along right
popular.
now.
Let me go back to last night. This is the president on Dems voting together in mass. Watch.
The fact is, the Democrats are lousy politicians. They're lousy on policy. The one thing they do is they stick together. It's always like 48, 49. Nobody leaves in the Senate. They stick together. They always vote like 100%. Okay? So we need more Republicans.
Yeah, what do you think of that, Brad?
I think the president's right. All you have to do is look at the resistance to every bill that the president puts forward. The tax bill, not one Democrat. You mean to say not one Democrat thought that was a good bill? They were told not to vote for the bill, and they did. And look at the State of the Union. When Joe Manchin tried to stand up when the president was talking about patriotism and supported the troops, the Democrats sat on their hands and gave a look to Manchin, and what did he do? He sat down. Yeah, this is what the Democrats do. They bully each other.
I think this entire election boils down to three things. If the Republicans can sell a message of tax cuts, a good, stable economy, and stability in North Korea, not a resolution, but they're not firing off rockets and they're not testing nuclear weapons.
I tend to agree with that, but herein lies the problem. Gas prices at the pump as we enter the summer driving season are through the roof. This ideal of a tax when it was going to prime pump the economy is working for some, but it's not working for everybody. It's not working in urban areas like Nashville. It's not working like in urban areas in Memphis, where people of color and working class families aren't getting those opportunities.
Look at the unemployment from the minorities. Wait a
minute. Out of time. And that is where this president's going to have trouble, is convincing individuals the economy is doing better when gas prices are so high.
Got to make it quick, Brad.
Look, the president has a record. Richard doesn't want to admit
gas prices.
But
that's the record, Brad.
Gas prices, a lot have to do with state taxes. You know that. And by the way,
but that's not why we're seeing a spike at the pump. We're seeing a spike at the pump because this president wants to engage in fun trade wars.
It's called summertime.
That's called Memorial Weekend. Bad Brad and Slick Richard. See you guys.
Like
real. Let me know. Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah.
See if we can sell that. Thank you, guys.
Good to see you.
Fox News alert, we're awaiting a big UN Security Council meeting after militant groups in Gaza fired more rockets into Israel overnight. We are live from the UN.
Also later this morning, a federal judge will hear from Stormy Daniels' lawyer. The Michael Cohen matter report from the courthouse live coming up in minutes. Stay tuned. Whoa. Lance Brown stopped on the side of the road in Scottsdale to take that video. Dust devils apparently form when the sun heats up one part of the ground faster than the ground around it. I did not know that.
Well, that's a dust devil, and Lance Brown's a daredevil, because I would not stand anywhere near that.
That's kind of
just
funky,
to get the
right?
photo, but
with blue skies,
something.
Nonetheless. Yes, Arizona. There you go. Check it out.
Well, in less than an hour, a federal judge is expected to hear from the adult film star Stormy Daniels' attorney on his motion to intervene in the government's case against President Trump's longtime personal lawyer, Michael Cohen. Laura Ingalls live outside the U.S. District Court in New York City with more on this. Good morning, Laura.
Good morning. Hi, Sandra. And, those audio recordings, we still don't know what they are, who is on them, or what was being said. Those audio recordings being teased by attorney Michael Avenatti. Maybe we'll find out today. But at issue and what is on the agenda regarding his client, but needs the judge to okay that since he is licensed in California, not New York. And this has been an ongoing battle in the case that has pitted the legal teams of Cohen, President Trump, and the Trump Organization against the U.S. government to determine what prosecutors can have access to. In fact, there has been so much sensitive material to get through. The judge in this case had to appoint a retired judge, Barbara Jones, to be the one to decide who gets to see which materials. She is considered a special master on this. According to court documents filed yesterday, Jones has reviewed nearly 13,000 pages of hard copy documents, and there is still much more to go, which means this is going to be a costly venture for everyone involved. So far, Jones has charged over $47,000 for her time, which will be split by half by the government and half by Cohen, Mr. Trump, and the Trump Organization. So once inside today, again, this hearing is expected to get underway in about 30 minutes. All sides will give a status update on where they are with the materials, and the judge could rule on Avenatti's request to be a part of this.